I read about Addverb developing a humanoid. How is life going to change once humanoids are full blown? It sounds very scary that a robot is going to control everything.
What will eventually happen is that you would be able to just replace a human just like that, right? At the click of a button. Noida Authority didn't believe that we were making robots in our rented facility. The IAS officer actually came to see where are the robots. Then an interview process happened and we got a land in Noida. There are a huge amount of use cases in India which cannot be done anywhere else. A use case that is very close to my heart is manual scavenging. When I see that use case, I feel that no human should ever do that job.
What are top 3 problems that you think a young entrepreneur today should try and attempt to solve?
I think in this decade, we are going to see a lot of humanoids. Just like in 90s, we saw a lot of desktop.
We are a fairly populous country, 1.3 billion people. 1.4 billion people now. Why do we need a robot? What's the thesis of doing automation in India? What role do you think government plays in making India globally sort of relevant in manufacturing?
I feel government should not have any business with business apart from giving good law and order, infrastructure, clear tax system. बस और उसके अलावा जो भी इंडस्ट्री को हेल्प चाहिए in terms of infrastructure as you've already said, वो दीजिए and then let there be free competition. There will be survival of the fittest. So in India, people go for automation because they want to scale their business. They want to manage the volumes that is required. In India, you don't go for automation because you want to replace the labor. That's the use case of the West.
Correct.
So when we were at Asian Paints, the way we used to look at it is that it is a technology company. Paint is an outcome.
Welcome back to the Indian Dream Podcast, Season 2. We are focusing on manufacturing. I have another really interesting manufacturing story. Today's story is very interesting. This is a company called Addverb Technologies. They build robots for warehouse automation and manufacturing automation. They've also built robots for healthcare and a bunch of different industries. They're probably going to be one of the first companies in India developing a humanoid. What's a humanoid? If you've all seen Optimus of Tesla that Elon Musk has spoken about, or Boston Dynamics, these are humanoids and they are on track to release something next year. So I'm very excited about that. But they've been at it for 8 years now. This is a team that came out of Asian Paints. And one of the things that you'll hear our guest, Satish Shukla, who's the co-founder at Addverb Technologies, talk about in the podcast that Asian Paints is a technology company. Paint happens to be the outcome. So these are people who learned in that ecosystem of using technology to automate factories, to automate warehouses, took a lot of that insight and built Addverb Technologies in 2016. In this conversation, it's a wide-ranging conversation, first of all, about the role of R&D, how can India sort of compete with China, what it takes to sort of build hardware business out of India, the reality of building a business in India and the two mindsets of cribbing versus finding the opportunity. We also speak about the fact that how the UP government helped them a lot. One of their recent projects is a 15-acre factory that can manufacture 1 lakh robots. So we're talking about immense scale and how the government played a role in helping them sort of secure the facility and stuff like that. They're also backed by Reliance, which is an interesting story in itself, and how a company like Reliance helps Addverb Technologies in trialing a lot of these robots that they build. This is a story that is built in India for India, but also found an opportunity in the global markets. They are close to 500 crores or 800 crores in revenue in the next year. That's the projected goal that they have, out of which 50% of that revenue is going to come from all the automation or all the robotics automation that they're doing outside of India. A phenomenal story of Make in India for the world. With that, let's jump onto the episode. Free-flowing conversation. I'm sure you guys are going to like it. Satish, welcome to the Indian Dream Podcast. Very excited to talk to you about Addverb and everything that you guys have done over the last 8-9 years. Before I jump into the Addverb story, before I jump into India's role in manufacturing, I read about Addverb developing a humanoid, and that's going to be launched over the next year or so. Humanoids have obviously been in the news because of Elon Musk and Tesla and the Optimus robot. How is life going to change once humanoids are full blown in real life of manufacturing, warehouse management and all of that? Because on one side of it, it sounds very scary that a robot is going to control everything. But on the other side of it, the productivity benefits that you can potentially get out of it seem immense. So I'm curious to hear your side of the story on, one, what goes into developing a thing like humanoid, because it seems very complicated, but how is life going to change after that?
Thank you for the opportunity. And that's an interesting question around humanoid. So basically, how we like to see ourselves at Addverb is a robotics company that started with warehouse automation. And today we have built robots like a quadruped for security, surveillance, maintenance application, which is basically a robotic dog, which we call Tracker. We have also now built a collaborative robot, which basically helps in healthcare applications, apart from warehouse automation applications as well. And the next product that we have earmarked for ourselves, which we will launch in 2025, is the humanoid. So as you've rightly said that there would be multiple use cases or applications of humanoid. So it will not only be limited to warehouse automation, but it will also find applications in defense, surveillance, healthcare, hotel, elderly care, anywhere where you would want a human to do a job, right? That's where now a humanoid will be able to do a job. The job has to be repeatable in nature. Earlier with industrial automation or fixed automation, what I would say is that you would need to design the process in such a way that the process would not remain flexible. But today with humanoid, what will eventually happen is that you would be able to just replace a human just like that, right? At the click of a button, because the humanoid will essentially be able to mimic all the functionalities that a human can do, right? And you rightly mentioned there are many companies like Tesla, Figure, Agility, etc., who are bringing their own humanoids. So we felt that India also needs to have its own humanoid, and that's very important because there are a huge amount of use cases in India which cannot be done anywhere else. So to give you a simple example, a use case that is very close to my heart is manual scavenging. When I see that use case, I feel that no human should ever do that job, right? But humanoid can do that job, right? There's no issue in why humanoid cannot target to do that job. So there are many jobs that exist in India today, like picking up garbage. A lot of time when these guys go to pick up garbage, they don't have basic healthcare kits. A lot of time they get infected because of used syringes and other healthcare hazards, right? So you can have humanoids replace all these people and perform this task. Any which ways, these jobs are not having a lot of dignity.
Correct.
They do not have a lot of respect. And the jobs that you didn't want to do, if you see the foundation of Indian society, the jobs that you didn't want to do were essentially probably outsourced to the weaker section of the society, and then a stigma was associated with them, which we today call caste.
Right.
Right. So, and that has been the root cause of problem in our civilization, right? The consequences of which we are still facing today.
Right.
So I see humanoids coming over and taking all those jobs which humans should not do in the first place, right? I also feel that this will change a lot of fabric of society. Today, I'll give you very simple examples. Today, the kids study and then they go to US, they go to Europe, they go to Australia to study, and then elderly parents are left behind. You hear so many times that they have been robbed, they have been mobbed, they have been killed, they have been murdered. Why can't you have a humanoid who can take care of their basic things? These kind of issues are not going to come. So just like you have a vacuum cleaner robot in every house,
right,
you might have a humanoid robot in every house as well. There was a cartoon which we used to see called Richie Rich.
Right.
And there used to be a lady butler who was a robot. So there are a lot of unproductive tasks that are going to get outsourced to humanoid robots. It is not going to affect us negatively, but it is only going to change the fabric of the society, make society more secure, will give people the opportunity to take care of their loved ones from remote locations, will also eliminate jobs that are dull, dirty, and dangerous, which should not have existed in the first place but have been there for some reason or the other. These are some of the reasons, these are some of the applications or use cases that I see. Obviously, apart from that, there are huge use cases in warehouses. Because in warehouses, picking is still being done by humans, right? So those kind of jobs can totally be automated. And definitely, I see a huge amount of use cases in defense. So if you see the war that is going on right now, Russia and Ukraine, among the many wars that's going on right now, Russia has huge amounts of jets and missiles. But still, if you see what has kept them back, it's drones. Right? So the modern warfare is also changing. And that's where robots or humanoid robots will also find multiple use cases and applications. At the end of the day, all these weapons will be an act of deterrence. One thing has been proven that nobody can win a war now.
Correct.
You can only have deterrence. it will lead to less loss of life,
Right.
and that's better for everyone involved. So there are huge amount of use cases like these that we see for humanoid. It will not only be limited to industrial or warehouse automation application, but it will be spread across anywhere a human is doing a job, a humanoid will be able to do it.
How many years before you think they're commonplace in society?
I think in this decade we are going to see a lot of humanoids. Just like in 90s, we saw a lot of desktops. I'm coming from an Indian perspective, at least in urban centers or in urban cities like Delhi, Mumbai, even cities like Indore, etc., started to have desktops in late 90s. I think that's what is going to happen with humanoid in this decade.
One other interesting thing that I saw was, especially in elder care, you're not just talking about physically taking care of them, but the loneliness epidemic that the elder care face, and especially with people who've used ChatGPT on their the voice, it's actually can be very therapeutic just talking about the problem that you're facing and doing all of that. This is a perfect example of a humanoid having some EQ to actually have a conversation with an elder, and then obviously, as you said, remote surveillance or just taking care of that, which was not an angle that I thought about when it came to humanoids. Because when you think about robots, you think about robots without EQ. But we are now emerging into that territory where these are humans with humanoids with some EQ as well, right?
So what will essentially happen is, so see, these humanoids will be agents of AI, right? So AI is also moving very quickly towards AGI, right? Which is like human intelligence.
Correct.
So as you've correctly said that the robot or the model can be trained on family data.
Correct.
And then they can have a conversation with the elderly people, and the people will also not feel that they are alone. And that's how it will change the fabric of the family as well. The guilt with which the migrant has to live, that I'm not here to take care of my loved ones, that can be solved to a very large extent. And I think in countries like Japan, you will start seeing these use cases very fast. Already there are, but those use cases will evolve very fast and those kind of use cases will lead examples for others to follow as well. And we will also see huge amount of use cases in India as well.
There are two parts to it where I want to sort of go deeper on. One is automation in India, right? We're a fairly populous country, 1.3 billion people. 1.4 billion people now. Yeah. Automation isn't something that, at least instinctively, intuitively, you would think about. There are enough humans to do the job, right? Apart from the dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, humanoids or the warehouse robots that you've been working on, from a perspective that there are humans to do that job, why do we need a robot, right? And you guys started out focusing on automation in India. What was the thesis? What was the thesis back in 2016 when you guys started and said, let's build warehouse robots first, and then of course you've evolved and done multiple types of robots, but what's the thesis of doing automation in India?
Sure. So all of us were working in Asian Paints. All the four of us were working in Asian Paints. And Asian Paints, if you ask me, my perspective was basically, okay, so today as we speak, there's a huge paint war going on in India.
Right.
And there's going to be a big push on margins. And everybody is asking the question, what happened to the thesis that Asian Paints had huge technology, huge AI and whatnot? They still have it, right? What I have learned in last 5 years, anybody with deep pockets can enter any industry and then have a price war, but only time will tell who has a better business model, right? So when we were at Asian Paints, the way we used to look at it is that it is a technology company. Paint is an outcome, right? So essentially, they were very focused on technology, and they had this vision of having fully lights out factories. So there would not be a single person required to run the factory. Now you cannot build this factory in 1 year or 2 years. It has to be a gradual process. And that's how they built a team called Mantech, whose only job was to go see around the world and then come and build automated factories. So every 3 to 4 years, they were building one of the world's largest paint factories. So they built a factory in Sri Perumbudur. Then they built in Chennai, they built a factory in Rohtak in Haryana, which was one of the world's largest at that time. Then they built a factory in Khandala near Pune. Then they built a factory in Vizag and then Mysore in last 5 years. So we were a part of the team which was building this factory. And then so what eventually happened was, after building the Rohtak factory, we were also tasked with operating that factory as well. So all of us were working in that Rohtak factory. And in 2015, around 2015-16, what we realized was that there were multiple factors which were at play, which will help automation company to grow in India. So first was, there was a huge push on Make in India by the existing government of that time, led by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. And we felt that if global manufacturing has to come in India, they will definitely need automation. This was also a time when FMCG companies were growing in India. So companies like Asian Paints were investing, companies like Unilever were investing, companies like ITC was investing. So all these companies would typically need automation to handle huge number of SKUs. Then this was also the time when Jio had launched free data, and e-commerce was in every nook and corner of the country. You had more than 10, 15, 20 e-commerce players. This was a time when Myntra had decided to go on mobile,
Right.
complete mobile and all those things. And in e-commerce, you need automation because the volume that you're handling has huge variability and your order size is less. So you need automation for sortation, you need automation for picking, you need to have huge warehouses, you need automation to cater to those requirements. So we felt that, okay, this will also be a trigger that will, so there were multiple triggers why we felt that automation is the right industry to be in, is a secular industry to be in at this stage. So e-commerce was growing. This was also a time when organized retail was growing in a big way. So DMart was expanding aggressively. Big Bazaar had a huge footprint across the countries. You would find Vishal Megamart, Reliance Fresh, V-Mart in even tier 4, tier 5 cities and even Mufassal towns, right? So organized retail, since the amount of SKUs they would handle and the throughput that they would handle would also need automation at their backend. And then GST had been implemented. And earlier the warehouses were built for taking advantage of the tax regime. Now the warehouses would be built to take advantage of actual supply chain. You would have huge warehouses. And these 5-6 factors made us feel that the time was right for us to start something in automation, because we had an edge that we were one of the few people probably in the country who were users of automation to a very large extent because of the position that we were in at Asian Paints. And we felt that the time was right for us to move from being users to creators of technology. And since we had installed all these facilities at Asian Paints, we felt that we could build products which will be more robust in nature, which will find more acceptability and will come at the correct price point for Indian market. And that's what we were able to do for next 4 years. We only focused on India and we were able to build a top line of more than 100 crores in automation and robotics category by the end of the financial. So when I say 100 crores in one financial year.
Right.
So we were able to clock more than 100 crores in our fourth full financial year.
And this is just majorly from warehouse automation.
Warehouse automation, majorly from warehouse and factory automation. So factories will also have captive warehouses.
Right.
So majorly from factory and warehouse automation.
Tell me a few examples of the different types of robots that are employed in a warehouse.
Sure. So we classify our product category, which could also be the industry classification as well. So we were the first company globally to give this classification, and now we see almost all the players using this kind of a classification globally. So we see automation in two categories: fixed automation and flexible automation. So fixed automation typically is automation that requires infrastructure like racks, tracks, etc. to move the automation systems. Flexible automation system consists of robotics that does not require any fixed infrastructure. So we have mobile robots. So these are robots that can move on natural navigation. To imagine, it will be like self-driving cars running inside warehouses in a controlled environment. Then we have sorting robots. Sorting robots essentially are used for sorting applications. They run with optical markers on the ground. They have a scanner at the bottom of the robot, and then they can find their path with the help of the optical markers on the floor. We have multi-carton robot, which basically can store cartons or crates at height and again move with the help of optical markers on the floor. Then we have collaborative robots that I've already talked about. In fixed automation, we have automation systems, which is mainly our automated storage and retrieval system portfolio, where we have a pallet shuttle which runs on tracks, helps you to implement FIFO, LIFO, helps you to store material at height of up to 12 meters, 15 meters. Then we have crane-based ASRS, which is basically a crane structure that helps you store and retrieve pallets inside structure of racks. You can typically go up to 30, 35, 40 meters with this kind of a structure. Then we have carton shuttle, which basically helps you store material at height. This material needs to be in the form of a crate or carton. So these are some of the different product portfolios that we have, apart from enterprise software that we offer, which is warehouse management system, which helps you control the inventory, a warehouse control system, which helps you maintain different kinds of automation system, a warehouse execution system, which basically is a single software, which you only need and you don't need anything else if you go in a warehouse. So it will combine both WMS and WCS. And then we have a fleet management system, which basically controls the fleet of robots. So we can control up to 500 robots deployed in a warehouse at any point of time.
Interesting. When you think about India, highly tech optimized manufacturing robots, this is not something that people associate with India manufacturing, right? How difficult was it to create these many products over the last 8 or so years since you guys started? And what do you think is a key to sort of making this happen? That might not be very obvious, right? Of course, you need to invest in talent and all of those things. What made this happen? Because this doesn't seem like, started and you'll land at this outcome if you keep at it. There's a lot of things that have to go right for this, right?
So, see, India is a land of dichotomy,
Yeah.
right? So we all hear about India 1, India 2, India 3. So you have an India 1 which has per capita income of Singapore,
Right.
and then you have an India which has per capita income of Sub-Sahara Africa as well,
Right.
So what we study the normal curve, so you actually see all that happening, and the curve is a little bit stretched as well.
Correct.
But in other countries, what usually happens is that the difference is not so much, right? In everything, right? So if you go to US, I've only gone to US as a tourist or as a business visitor, but I can count 50 cities of US sitting here,
Right.
Which will be good to live. People would be living there. And that's the story of Germany. That's the story of France. That's the story of Netherlands. That's the story of Britain. Okay, it has declined to a very large
Right.
extent today, but that's how the world is. But if you see India, there would be only 4 or 5 cities which would actually have good connectivity, and you will feel like I'm living in a global city. And then you will have small towns or places where you would feel that I'm living in a war-torn zone, right? That is the case with industrial landscape as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I cannot say that that in India you do not have manufacturing which is highly automated or is truly world class. ऐसा नहीं है,
correct.
इंडिया में भी है,
हाँ.
right? There are manufacturing facilities which are truly world class. In Asian Paints we used to have factory जहाँ पे shop floor पे आपको पेंट भी नहीं दिखता था.
Wow.
ठीक है, मतलब पैकिंग फ्लोर पे मैं जाता था तो मुझे कई बार अपनी शक्ल भी दिखती थी.
Wow.
Right? So those factories are mind blowing.
Right.
Mind blowing. So if you're in Singapore and somebody takes you from Singapore in a plane, brings you to IGI Terminal 3 Delhi, और वहां से अगर वो चॉपर से उठा के आपको एशियन पेंट्स रोहतक फैक्ट्री में लाएगा तो आपको ऐसा लगेगा मैं सिंगापुर में ही हूँ. Right? So, and there are other manufacturing facilities as well. If I take the example of Reliance refinery, one of the best in the world, right? One of the best in the world. Simply, there is no counterpart to it, right? तो बहुत सारे ऐसे इंडस्ट्रीज हैं इंडिया में जो ट्रिमेंडस अमाउंट ऑफ रोबोटिक्स एंड ऑटोमेशन यूज कर रहे हैं. एट द सेम टाइम वी हैव एग्जांपल ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फैसिलिटीज व्हिच आर रनिंग like how a sub-Saharan factory would work. So that's the dichotomy of manufacturing landscape as well. So we always had companies which were willing to invest in automation. Now here so one of our first clients was Patanjali, right?
I'm
Now
very surprised.
our second client was a company from South India called Megha Spring, which used to make a drink called Bindu Fizz Jeera. So why were these companies going for automation? They didn't want to replace labor. Replacing labor was not their mandate, right? They were scaling very fast. So if you see in 2014-15, Patanjali was scaling like anything.
Correct.
Right? This was the time when Baba Ramdev was everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why when they were scaling fast, they needed automation. And similarly, this brand Bindu Fizz Jeera was scaling like anything. I remember they had inaugurated their new facility and they were talking about big expansion plans. So in India, people go for automation because they want to scale their business. They want to manage the volumes that is required. In India, you don't go for automation because you want to replace the labor. That's the use case of the West.
Correct.
You will in US, you will have a warehouse operator who will come, will get a salary of 100,000 USD, 110,000 USD, and would come in his own car, probably come in a BMW, you never know. And he would not want to come after a week or so. He doesn't feel like working. He doesn't feel like coming, right? He will have 100 other opportunities to work. So in India, that's not the case. In India, you need to solve for efficiency, you need to solve for accuracy, you need to solve for reliability, and that can only happen through automation because there are so many players in the market. If you are not ready to serve them, somebody else will. So in India, if I want to eat at 1 in the night, right? So it's a very interesting take. People talk about work-life balance and everybody is vilifying Narayan Murthy and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see all the memes about him. But okay, I don't support that everybody should work 100 hours a week. It should be up to the individual what they want to do, what they want to prioritize.
Right.
But we are a third world economy at the end of the day,
Right.
right? And such is our market that if you are not ready to serve me a burger at 1 in the night, somebody else will,
Right.
right? But in Europe, he will shut the shop, he'll go home, and
There's nobody to serve
he'll
you.
not serve you,
Yeah.
right? And nobody else will also serve you.
Right.
That's the fundamental difference between us and them. And probably we are at that point of our journey where there is so much competition in the market that you need to, well, if you won't serve the market, somebody else will. Right? And that's why companies cannot afford to lose volumes, to lose markets. And if you want to grow fast and scale fast in India, automation is the only way forward.
Interesting. The kind of examples that you gave me were large companies that had the vision to do automation and also had the capital sort of to invest in it, right? If India has to sort of be comparable to China in certain manufacturing sectors, I don't think we can leapfrog them anytime soon. I don't think we can be at par on all manufacturing sectors. But if we have to be competitive in some certain sectors, is this the blueprint, which is more highly automated factories, more sort of IP-led manufacturing that we need to invest in? Is that the blueprint to sort of come at par and be globally relevant in certain sectors?
To be very honest, yeah, it's difficult to compete with China.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that you acknowledge the strength of your competitor.
Right.
Right? It is difficult to compete with China. They are a fanatic set of individuals, people, country, however you want to put it.
Correct.
And they have been able to solve the quality problem. Right? So जब मैं छोटा था, when I was kid, सब लोग बोलते थे चाइनीज माल है, चाइनीज स्कूटर है, चाइनीज ये है, चाइनीज वो है, right? But today, the kind of products that they produce, right? We all have used phones or
Correct.
laptops which were either built in China or shipped via Thailand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But built in China essentially. So वो एक acknowledgement we definitely need to have, right? Second, see some of the fundamental reasons what I feel with India, the problem, I won't say problem, but some of the challenges that we face. Our economy is third world, but I think our wages are not third world.
Correct.
Right? When I say wages, I mean not in absolute dollar terms, but
Right.
in terms of purchase power parity.
Right.
I feel that our wages are not so low. Right?
To compete at the absolute high labor intensive.
Correct.
Yeah.
When you're talking about competing with Bangladesh,
Apparel
when
for
apparel
example.
makers, when
Yeah.
you're talking about competing with Bodia,
Yeah.
not sure about Pakistan.
Right.
But you need to understand that our wages are not so low, and I don't have empirical data to back up.
Yeah.
But based on the kind of wages that I see with my customers, the kind of wages that they are offering to people in factories, warehouses, the kind of wages that we offer to contract employees, it is not that low that we can compete in a labor-intensive industry, is what I feel, based on the rentals, etc., that I see
Yeah.
in India, right? So what can lead the way? What has led the way in past? And that's where I feel IP-led manufacturing can really create an impact and can really set us apart.
Tell us more about what's IP
So-
manufacturing.
IP-led manufacturing, they say India is the pharmacy of the world.
Right.
Right? So, and I could be totally wrong, but this is my understanding, is that they have certain formulations, they have certain chemistry that needs to be cracked. So tomorrow, if Cambodia wants to become one of the biggest generic players in the world, I don't think it is possible overnight. Right?
When you say generic medicine.
Generic pharmaceutical. So there is specialized medicine, generic medicines.
Correct.
There is API.
The ibuprofens and the
paracetamols.
Yeah.
So then there is APIs that
Right.
people manufacture. Then there are special chemicals that people manufacture. So there's an entire ecosystem, right? When you become the pharmacy of the world. But if they want to manufacture textile, it's a low-skilled job, right? You don't need skill. People can just come and start stitching or
Right.
running the looms, and you just need to invest in capex. But
Correct.
if you want to become the pharmacy of the world, right, you need to invest into intellectual property. Okay, people might say that we are not, if we are investing into intellectual property, why are we not discovering a lot of drugs? Probably the economy of discovering drugs doesn't make sense.
Correct.
Because we have a lot of contract what we call CDMO, Contract Development and Manufacturing Operations in India, which is essentially the big pharma outsourcing their R&D and contract development and manufacturing here. But the economy of discovery of medical drugs probably doesn't make sense,
Correct.
right? And we all saw what happened in COVID. We had a very good vaccine, Covaxin. We saw what happened to it, right? There were Indian pharma companies which were manufacturing COVID vaccine like Zycov-D. We never heard of it, right? So probably, I think the drug discovery does not make economic sense because
Correct.
you need different kind of stakeholder management probably. But you need IP to manufacture medicines. And that's where we have been able to march ahead of China. Similarly, we have been able to march ahead of China in two-wheeler manufacturing, right? So in two-wheeler, we have always had really good products. So you can consider a Hero MotoCorp, you can consider a Bajaj Auto, you can
TVS.
consider a TVS, which is really good, right? And then Ather Energy,
Right.
which has built its own electric vehicle. I would not want to talk about a player who has bought a EV
Correct.
from Europe and selling it under his brand. But
Correct.
even if you ignore them, the rest of the players have built really good products, right? So that is again also IP-led manufacturing. They have designed their own products. They have so Hero MotoCorp mastered the art, along with Honda obviously,
Correct.
of building 100cc manufacturing bikes which can go up to long distances, right? So that is where India has succeeded in the past. That's where India's sweet spot is. So we need to focus on manufacturing which requires some sort of knowledge. And you can so the biggest problem today, India. So this is the first thing that I feel. You cannot just with brute force compete with China. The second thing where you need to compete with China is on productivity, right? One issue is that I do not have the wages, right? My wages are quite high in terms of purchasing power parity. Second, my labor is also not productive.
Correct.
That's also a reality,
Yeah.
right? So
Professionalism in India, labor is a problem that's well acknowledged.
correct. So, so even in white collar services,
Correct.
I'm not only talking about
Exactly.
blue collar. Even in white collar services,
That's a problem.
that's a problem. So my productivity also has to increase. So if I go for robotics and automation, I can also fight the productivity battle, right? And these are the two sweet spots which we have, through which we can really compete with China on a global scale, and we can also come up with products that will find acceptability in terms of cost, in terms of quality, and in terms of new features with innovation.
About the productivity problem, I saw an interesting tweet where somebody said that they sent requirements to an Indian manufacturer about
Yeah,
ये
I read
बनाना-
that.
ये बनाना है और China manufacturer. The turnaround time on giving the quotation and working back and forth in China is lightning quick, and that's a mindset problem that we need to solve regardless. Automation है नहीं है, वो तो mindset problem of professionalism needs to be solved regardless. But coming back to your point, I think so when it comes to IP-led manufacturing, 2 or 3 things in my mind are very important. One, you have to be patient with your journey, right? Because IP takes a lot of time to create. R&D becomes that much more important, and I think that's, as a country, we underinvest in R&D. Addverb has had a phenomenal story in terms of investing in R&D and continuously coming up with new products, because a product like Humanoid doesn't happen if you're not continuously investing in R&D for years to come, right? It's not something that you see Tesla and Boston Robotics and all these people put out a humanoid and then you start and say, I'm going to build a humanoid as well, right? These are year-long investments that go in. Tell me a little bit about both at the abstract level and at an Addverb level. How do you guys think about R&D? How do you invest in it? How do you figure out ROI on R&D? Because a lot of entrepreneurs have a difficult time figuring out, I'm investing in it today and maybe for 2-3 years with no end in sight, right? I have a classic example. I was considering doing PhD. So I did a research under a professor. And this is after, all 17, 18 years of my life in India, where you are studying for an exam. You're studying for that end goal ki ye exam pass karna hai, right? And you do this research where the professor is like, there's no end goal. Let's keep researching. Let's keep figuring out what happens on RFID tags on pharmacy and stuff like that. And for my Indian sort of educated brain, I was like, ye kahin to jani chahiye na baat. Matlab, where am I heading to? What's the goal? A lot of R&D technically is you have a broad goal in mind, but you can't really be sure this is what I'm trying to achieve, right? So what's the R&D mindset that's required? How do you guys look at R&D at Addverb, and any thoughts you want to share based on your learnings of investing in R&D for the last 8-9 years?
So I'll start first at the country level. As much as I would want India to invest in R&D, I understand, again, coming back to the dichotomy problem.
Right.
I think it was in 2011 or 12. I think it was in 2010 or 11 when Britain had given some grant to India, and for some reason whatsoever. And at that time, the headline was, a country which has its own space program, why do you need to give it a grant? Right? Even when we had launched our own rockets, I
Right.
think there was a famous cartoon where India wanted to enter the space club.
Yeah.
There were elites sitting, and there was a cow
Correct.
which was labeled as India or something like that, right? Now that's a reality with which the government, or whichever government is there, right? BJP, Congress, whatever it is, has to live with. You live in a country which is infested with open defecation. People are hungry. People are poor. I cannot go and invest in R&D while keeping these people poor. That's also a reality. Now they can be poor because of a host of reasons, because of the way politics is done, whatever said and done. So I think at the government level that balancing has to be done, which sort of disincentivizes the government to extensively invest in R&D, right? This, at the end of the day, if I ask you, there are still people who say, why do we need a bullet train in India? Let us first start feeding the people.
Right.
Right? Why do we need a Statue of Unity in India? Why do you need the Vande Bharats in India? It is going. But they don't understand that this is a technology upgradation that's happening.
Correct.
If you will build bullet train, you will develop 10 types of capabilities.
Correct.
Right? When you built a metro in Delhi, today you are. So when I went to Indore last week, I saw that a metro was being built in Indore. I could have never imagined a metro being built in Indore when I was studying there. So you can see how technology changes and affects the fundamental way in which the society evolves. But obviously, government has a balancing act to do. And in a country like India, where there is so much poverty, I cannot expect the government to invest in R&D in a huge way. Though
Right.
I would want.
Yeah.
I would want कि आप तो अपना 10% of GDP भाई R&D पे spend कर दो. Right? मतलब मेरे लिए तो उससे अच्छी कोई चीज़ ही नहीं हो सकती.
Correct.
But I understand that there are problems.
Correct.
They have to manage a lot of things. Now coming back to company, right, or how we have looked at R&D. So you need to understand that we are in a field where technology keeps on disrupting, right? If you don't invest in R&D, correct, somebody else will put you out of business. That's where you have to find that fine balance of investing in R&D to develop new products and to develop new features. You will continue to face failures.
Right, of course.
ऐसा नहीं है कि जितना हम प्रोडक्ट बनाने गए सारा प्रोडक्ट बन गया, या हमको प्रोडक्ट इंस्टॉल करने में चैलेंज नहीं आया. But how fast you learn from it, right? That is how you need to change the lens with which you see, correct? Not every time you will get a fixed amount of ROI on your R&D.
Yeah.
Right? It is not compulsory.
Right.
Second, all the research that you're doing might not yield the result today, but should yield the result at least 3 years, 4 years. You should have a plan. And when you feel that I'm not able to meet that plan, you should be ready to either tweak your research or add some more things, or probably stop it all if you feel that it is not going to yield any results, right? That is also very important. Third, I have seen certain fundamental changes since you mentioned the example of a college,
right,
and PhD, I have seen certain fundamental changes at institute level as well now, which were not there when we started. So even established institutes like IITs and NITs are allowing students to pursue their last semester as a full-time internship at organizations.
Right.
This was not the case earlier.
Correct.
Now what happens is, if a student is doing a research project, let's say in robotics, they can reach out to us and they can work with us. It will also help them in their project. It will also help us in product development.
Correct.
Right? So we have seen this change in academics. Second change that I have seen, there are many institutes that are now coming up which is trying to fill. So everybody talks about the industry skill gap, etc. But I have seen a lot of institutes updating their courses, right, faster than how it used to be 10 years back.
Yeah.
So now I see robotics and automation getting introduced. There are many institutes who have reached out to us and we have helped them in designing, or we have recommended these are the kind of courses that you should teach to your students, right? So that is also happening. Third, we are now seeing a lot of competition, intercollegiate competition, which is sponsored by the government, like DD Robocon. We sponsor that event a lot. We have sponsored that event in the past. In DD Robocon, colleges from across the country, students come together. So they give a problem. You have to solve that problem through robotics. They then send their nominations. They come to Delhi. It has happened in Tyagaraja Stadium in the past. Then they come to Delhi. They give their suggestions. They implement their projects, which is basically a robotics project. They compete against each other, and then a team wins. The team that wins goes to Global Robocon. These kind of avenues were not that publicized,
Yeah.
popular, or supported by college. I have seen professors coming with students in that event.
Wow.
This was something that was unfathomable in the past.
Correct.
Right now, we have collaborated with multiple colleges. So we are seeing this openness to in academic institutions where professors are ready to collaborate and they want to put their brain and their best students to solve certain problems. This was also not something that we saw earlier, right? I don't remember these kind of things in 2015-16 when we were starting. There are many institutes like IIT Chennai which have also led the way by creating an incubator, and some of the deep tech companies that you see in India have all been incubated from that deep tech center. I think it is Junjunwala Center of Incubation. So something like that. I'm forgetting the name, but you just go and visit that center and you see the amount of contribution that they've made in deep tech. So despite government spending less, there are many models that companies can try which can be low cost models for R&D and eventually give them a big return. But at the end of the day, you need to continue that spend. You cannot stop it.
Yeah.
So we spend almost somewhere between 5 to 10% of our revenue on an annual basis on R&D, and that has helped us to stay ahead of the competition.
Very interesting. And one of the important points that you mentioned is there are going to be failures along the way in R&D. That's the reason why you
There are going to be failures not only in R&D, everything that you do. Everything that you do.
Yeah.
If I think there are only two types of people who will never experience failure. I think God and liars.
Yeah.
उसके अलावा तो I don't think there is anyone who will not experience a failure. You have to experience a failure in product development, deployment. You face failure while hiring people.
Yeah.
You hire some of the best talent and they don't turn out to be the way you expected. And probably it's not their fault.
Yeah, culturally fit.
They were not culturally fit, or you did not give them the right environment, or you did not give them the right projects. They were not engaged enough. So you be ready to fail. This is something that I very strongly believe. If you're starting up, be ready to fail 10 times a day.
Yeah. Very interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the things that you mentioned was till 2020, about that time, you were only focused on India. So a lot of the problems that you were focusing on were India-specific problems, like you said, the rise in e-commerce, the rise in the population and the demand that we have in warehouse automation. But over the last few years, we've also gone international. What's that journey been like? How is an Indian robotics company perceived internationally? Is there a perception, or is it just merit of your product? I'm very curious to hear about that.
So we first, as I told you, that we first started in India. For 3 to 4 years, we scaled and stabilized our products in India. We did some implementation in India because logistically it was easy to provide support. Automation solution is not only about giving a product or deploying it. It is also about the ability to have support, to give support to the customer so that their operations are not affected to that extent. So in 2020, when COVID hit, we were going global. So that was the year we had earmarked for going global. So we first did a project in Britain, then we did a project in Singapore, then we did a project in Australia, then we got some projects in Europe, and then one project in Middle East, and then finally we went to US. Now, so what we have experienced, 3-4 things. The first thing is the perception of Indian companies is generally good, probably because in last 3-4 years, India has had a favorable outlook from other countries, especially the countries where we operate. So we operate in Australia, we operate in Middle East, we operate in US, and then we operate in Europe. So if you see, all these countries have good outlook towards India, and the relationship has broadly been good. So obviously, being an Indian company and the kind of outlook that companies have developed towards China post-COVID has helped us. Then Indian companies are typically associated with their software prowess.
Correct.
So, and robotics is about hardware and software.
Right.
So that's where we also get an edge. And then third, you have to, at the end of the day, you are a newcomer, you are an outsider, and you have to create a niche for yourself, create a brand, or create a place for yourself at the table. So we have done that by hiring people from different nationalities, hiring a lot of locals who sort of represent Addverb and also bring the flavor of that country to Addverb. It is very important to be local in that extent. I can be a global company, but I have to have local flavor. Then only I will find acceptance in that region, in that culture. So in US also you have different subcultures. There is Midwest, there is West Coast, there is East Coast. and different kinds of people associate themselves with different things. So you have to create a multicultural workforce which sorts of reflects that country. Your unit should reflect the country or mimic the country that you're operating in, and that's a symbol or that's an outcome that you can measure that I have created a good organization or an inclusive organization. And that's how our journey has been. The journey has been quite good. We have today almost 50% of our revenue comes from outside India, and I think going forward the revenue mix will more become 70-30 as we expand globally faster.
Is the problem statement different? Is the product different? Is the challenge of solving some of those warehouse management or factory automation, is that different there, or is it similar sort of problem sets that are?
It's more easier there
How so?
as compared to India. So, see, in India, you face very typical problems like the floor is not right, the electricity connection is not stable, and the load is variable. Then there are dust storms, there are thunderstorms, there are floods, and whatnot. Right? To that extent, those markets are more developed, more mature. So, I know industrial parks where there are no roads, right? It's a logistic park with no roads.
Correct.
I have to transfer all my material there. Then I have to get labor to do work in those locations. A lot of locations, when we go to install, we are the first ones to go there. In US, what we have seen is when we go to install these, a lot of these are brownfield expansion, or even when there is a greenfield expansion, the building, etc., is complete, right? So it has been easier if you ask me from an installation point of view, but from scaling point of view or from deployment point of view, the challenges broadly remain the same. But from installation point of view, it is more easier to install in countries like Australia, US, Middle East, etc., because the rules, the norms are more elaborate, more simple. The labor, as we talked about, is very dedicated. Is the blue collared work is not seen with disrespect there.
Correct.
So you have a lot of skilled workforce available to do that job. In India, you do not find that kind of skilled workforce. So you have to deploy people from one place to another. So this is a practical problem that I read when L&T said that because of a lack of welders, they are suffering in their projects. We also face a lack of welders. That's a reality, right?
Wow. How do you solve this? Because बहुत critical है. The skilled manforce that you're talking about is very critical, especially as more and more technology solutions are developed. You need people to operate these, and they need to be taught accordingly. India doesn't have a good vocational sort of training program. How do you really solve this? Is it industry led? Is it government led? Is it a partnership that solves it? Because जब तक वो solve नहीं होगा, तब तो you literally have to build lights out factories where no humans are involved because there are no skilled laborers, right?
So this is a dichotomy. Again, we have been talking about India and dichotomy. On one hand, you're saying there are no jobs.
Right.
Right. Everybody I hear, I see, everybody says there are no jobs, there are no jobs, there is huge unemployment. At the other end of the spectrum, you will see companies, and it is not only for skilled, unskilled, or I would say blue-collar workforce, but if you go and you see, there will be huge openings for software engineers even for today.
Correct.
Right, but you'll not find people with the right skills. I don't know where the problem is, and how can academia only solve that problem? I don't understand that as well.
Right.
But there are avenues today available to train people. So you have a very elaborate apprenticeship scheme which is supported by the government,
right,
where you can train apprentices and you get incentives from government as well to train those apprentices. So we train a lot of apprentices in our manufacturing facility.
Right.
And I know many companies that are training these apprentices. So when a lot of companies misuse as well.
Yeah.
They just get these people to work on the shop floor with no training or no absorption whatsoever, and after 4-5 years they're let go. But I know also very good companies who are training these people, who are giving them the right jobs, not just manual jobs. So I think that's the way forward for skill development. And obviously automation is going to solve a lot of problems. So we do a lot of robotic welding today.
Right.
So I'm sure a lot of these companies will go for robotic welding, even for smaller applications as well.
The dichotomy of India, as you said, was all these subsidies that are directed towards, promotion of manufacturing and stuff like that are also misused. A lot of the PLI stories that we heard over the last 4 years were misused, right? And that obviously impacts where the government sort of pulls back on PLIs. I read about the fact that there's no specific PLI for robotics and automation, where if you think about it long-term perspective, it makes sense to have PLIs for more forward-looking industries, right? What role do you think government plays in making India globally sort of relevant in manufacturing? I know it's to a certain extent it is relevant, but we also know how far behind we are, right? What role do you think the government plays? Is it just subsidies? Is it something else? Where do you think the government steps in?
So, if you ask, see, our story has been very different. And so, I have a philosophy or I have a thought process on what government should do. So, but our story has also been very unique and very different. And probably this is one of the stories that should definitely come out. So, when we started this company in 2016, we got invested into by GAIL. Gas Authority of India Limited. So there was this initiative called Startup India, which was started by Honorable Prime Minister of the country, Sri Narendra Modi. And he asked all the PSUs to invest in startups which would make business sense for them.
Right.
And then GAIL had this initiative called Punk. And we saw an advertisement in the newspaper that if you fall under these categories, your startup, you please apply.
What's Punk?
So Punk was the initiative of GAIL.
Okay.
Under Startup India, they had said कि हम startups को पंख देंगे.
Oh, okay.
And that was the initiative. So they said you apply.
Huh.
If you fall and if मतलब we will have a process and then GAIL will invest.
Correct.
So Sangeet, who's our CEO, is an ex-GAIL employee. So we filled the form. We filled a web form, right? The link that we saw on the paper advertisement, we went and we filled it. There's no harm. We got a call from GAIL. That okay, we've read your application, we've seen the presentation, please come and meet us. They got us to give presentations to 2-3 committees, internal GAIL committees, and then GAIL invested in us, right?
ये story सही में आनी चाहिए बात.
So GAIL invested in us.
Yeah.
Then we saw an advertisement in newspaper. The Honorable Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath ji had just taken the oath. We saw an advertisement in the newspaper, Startup UP scheme. And you apply for land, there is a lottery system in Noida. Now, obviously, Honorable Supreme Court has cited so many times that Noida Authority reeks of corruption and those kind of folklores and stories we had also heard. But he said apply करते हैं, there's no harm.
Right.
पैसा तो लग नहीं रहा apply करने में क्या जा रहा है. So we applied and then we got interviewed by Noida Authority. They didn't believe that we were making robots in our rented facility. So they actually came, the IAS officer actually came to see where are the robots. So we showed them the shuttle, etc., and the manufacturing facility that we made. Then an interview process happened, and we got a land in Noida, in Sector 156, to manufacture our robots, which was eventually inaugurated by Sri Amitabh Kant, who was the CEO of Niti Aayog at that time. Then when we had to expand, we got a land from Uttar Pradesh government in 2022 in Greater Noida, and we were able to commission a factory in 12 months straight in 2023. And when we commissioned the factory, you can imagine that we had everything in place. The roads, the electricity, the power supply and whatnot. So it was a very good example of, I would say, minimum governance.
Of course.
Maximum government.
Right.
However you want to
minimum government, maximum government.
Maximum governance, minimum government.
Right.
Right? So this was the example where there was no interference, nothing. You help them and you give them sort of whatever they need, and then you stay out of it, right? And then this facility was inaugurated by Honorable Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Sri Yogi Adityanath. So this is, we have been probably lucky, or whatever I would say, at the right end of getting benefits. But see, in terms of PLI, etc., and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but any incentive which is not normal or natural, right? So all the land, etc., that we got or GAIL investing in us, I think that was more normal or natural way of doing it, right? Or migrating capital, because at the end of the day, you have to give land to industry.
Correct.
But if you do it through a startup scheme or a fast scheme, you see what can happen in 1 year. Somebody can put up a manufacturing facility, make it operational, give employment to direct, indirect 3,000 people. So, but any sort of incentive, as you said, people are misusing, will also lead to perverse actions. And it will not lead to a sustainable industry in the long run. See, at the end of the day, what can government do? Government can give you good law and order.
Yeah.
Government can make policies, but we've seen what is happening with GST, even with the good intent. The policy eventually diverges and becomes something else, probably what you did not want it to be. So they can have maximum governance, minimum government. They can have good infra.
Yeah.
Yes, they can have good infra, good power supply, good law and order, good roads, highway, expressway, constant power connection. But uske alawa, what can the government do? At the end of the day, it's the individual who has to make it happen, right? And I hear, see, If you ask me, government should have zero income tax.
Right.
Government should give us everything for free, and then we will manufacture, we'll flood the world with our products. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? When people ask me कि यार ऐसा होता है वैसा होता है, तो मैं पूछता हूँ अच्छा जब अब्दुल कलाम अपना मिसाइल छोड़ रहे थे तो क्या था उनके पास? मतलब रॉकेट बॉयज तो देखा ही है हमने, उसमें तो दिखाया ही है कि वो बेचारे बैलगाड़ी पे लेके जाते हैं, त्रिपांड पे उठाते हैं, राइट? तो कुछ भी नहीं था, एक्चुअल में कुछ भी नहीं था, राइट? तो बट दे पुल्ड इट ऑफ. सो एट द एंड ऑफ द डे, एंड अब्दुल कलाम इज नॉट द ओनली स्टोरी मतलब that is there na. There are many stories like that where people have actually pulled it off. You can see Sridharan's story where he pulled off Konkan Railway and he pulled off the Delhi Metro.
Correct.
You can read about E.M. Naik in his book The Nationalist. I think that book is The Nationalist, where he talks about building mega structures, right? So L&T is essentially the company that is building India.
Right.
And they did it all without whatever, I don't know what support they got or not.
Yeah.
But they did it with the same infrastructure, same economic policies. So at the end of the day, a lot of it depends on individual. You need to have a vision. You need to work hard for it. You need to have so every economic model will lead to a business model. Somebody has to find it.
Right.
There was a 10-minute delivery lurching somewhere close by, right?
Correct.
Somebody found it. Yeah. Somebody executed it. If you ask me why 10-minute delivery would work earlier, now I'll give you a very simple example of how 10-minute delivery is only possible in India. Right? And why it will work in India. इंडिया में विमेन सेफ्टी की कहानी तो सबको पता है.
हाँ.
करेक्ट. हाँ. मेरे घर पे मेरी बहन है. हाँ. या मेरी बीवी है. मैं बोलूंगा यार अच्छा तुमको क्यों जाना है बाहर? 10 मिनट में लाके दे रहा है ना. हाँ. है ना? 10 मिनट एक्स्ट्रा ही लग रहा है, तुम मंगा लो. और अगर दिल्ली में रहते हैं तो फिर तो और बोलूंगा कि 7 बजे के बाद मत जाना यार ठंड में. तुम मंगा ही लो. वो 10 मिनट में लाके दे रहा है तो वो यूज केस तो हमेशा रहेगा. करेक्ट. राइट. इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, गोइंग टू डिपार्टमेंटल स्टोर, फाइंडिंग अ पार्किंग, फिर बारिश, फिर सड़क, फिर स्मॉग, फिर 50 डिग्री टेम्परेचर, मुझे जाना ही नहीं बाहर सामान खरीदने. राइट. आई डोंट वांट टू गो. राइट. आई कैन गो टू ड्रिंक, आई कैन गो टू डाइन, आई कैन गो टू अ मॉल, बट आई डोंट वांट टू गो एंड डू ऑल दिस नॉनसेंस. तो अब आप एक तरीके से अगर देखें तो ये जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का प्रॉब्लम है, सिक्योरिटी का प्रॉब्लम है, उसने एक बिजनेस मॉडल दे दिया 10-minute डिलीवरी को. राइट. लोग जो कन्वीनियंस की बात कर रहे हो, क्या कन्वीनियंस है? वो यही कन्वीनियंस है ना कि एज अ वुमेन आई एम सेफ. I don't need to go. I don't know if they think like that or not, but if you ask me, I feel very safe. कि बॉस मतलब मैं अगर कहीं बिजनेस ट्रैवल पे भी हूँ, मेरा छोटा सा बच्चा है, मेरी बीवी है, वो 10 मिनट में कुछ मंगाएंगे, सिक्योरिटी गार्ड है, उसका वेटिंग हुआ है सिक्योरिटी डिलीवरी वाले का, वो आएगा अपना रख के चला जाएगा दरवाजे के बाहर, कोई दिक्कत भी नहीं, कहीं बाहर भी नहीं जाना. तो हर इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी, हर गवर्नेंस में हर टाइप का बिजनेस मॉडल बनेगा. वो कहते हैं ना कि मतलब ब्यूटी लाइज इन द आईज ऑफ द बिहोल्डन. करेक्ट. राइट. तो यू नीड टू हैव द राइट वे टू लुक, एंड गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट देयर टू run business. I feel government should not have any business with business apart from giving good law and order, infrastructure, clear tax system. बस. और उसके अलावा जो भी इंडस्ट्री को हेल्प चाहिए in terms of infrastructure, as you already said, वो दीजिए, and then let there be free competition. There will be survival of the fittest. Correct. और वो ग्लोबल स्केल पे करना होगा. मतलब वो सिर्फ इंडिया स्केल पे तो आपको करना नहीं होगा. टुडे वी हैव अ ग्लोबलाइज्ड इकोनॉमी. एग्जैक्टली. नंदन नीलेकणी सेड वेरी लॉन्ग बैक, आई थिंक द वर्ल्ड इज फ्लैट. या. तो आपको compete करना है ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी में. आईटी कंपनीज हैव डन इट इन 1990s. क्या गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट होगा? आई डोंट नो, आई हैव नॉट रेड, बट मुझे लगता है कि इट वाज ऑल बिकॉज ऑफ देयर ओन एंटरप्रेन्योर स्पिरिट. सो दैट्स हाउ द एनिमल स्पिरिट्स हैव टू कम, एंड गवर्नमेंट हेल्प्स. अच्छा है, नहीं हेल्प करता तो भी आप आगे बढ़िए.
आपकी जो स्टोरी, जो आपने 3-4 चीजें बताई on how the government without actively helping you but created that path for you to actually take up, right? These are stories that don't come out naturally. Generally they don't come out. What comes out is all the negative, because that sells more. We talk about what goes out in public, and it's about ye land nahi hai, ye infrastructure nahi hai, nahi hai. But it is a developing country with a population of 1.4 billion people and a democracy. People try and compare us to China, which is an autocratic nation, which, yes, development might be great, but it comes with a lot of other problems that people in India don't know about. और अगर वो same चीज apply करी तो they'll rebel. They'll be the first people to sort of rebel, right? What you're talking about is the drive and the intensity of persistence of like figure out करना है, ये vision है. Let me figure out how the government can help me or not, right? Because there have been, even if that didn't happen, you guys were renting a facility and you guys would have continued doing it, right? They just opened a few more doors to say, I'll make it easier for you. And that's what you're saying, the government's role sort of stops there and nothing beyond that. it's your free sort of market that plays out after that.
Yeah, so see, I don't, मतलब मैं एक तरफ जब कहता हूँ कि गवर्नमेंट शुड नॉट बी इन द बिजनेस,
Yeah.
राइट, तो दूसरी तरफ मैं ये नहीं कह सकता कि आप तो बिजनेस मत करो, मगर मुझे बिजनेस करने के लिए जो जो चाहिए वो आप करवा के दो. सो व्हेन वी स्टार्टेड, nowhere did we figure out कि गवर्नमेंट हेल्प नहीं करेगा तो क्या होगा. एंड आई डोंट थिंक एनीबडी राइट्स इट ऑन द टेबल कि अगर गवर्नमेंट हेल्प नहीं करेगा तो क्या होगा, राइट. आई सी, क्या कई बार क्या होता है, मतलब, एंड आई डोंट नो इफ दिस इज द राइट एग्जांपल और नॉट. आई हैव सीन मेनी पीपल हु हैव लॉस्ट देयर फादर्स, राइट, and still went on to do very good,
right,
very good,
yeah,
right. And we can all appreciate if you have, how lucky you are if you have both your parents,
yeah,
with you, your kid. But and to lose your father, or for that matter your mother at a very young age,
right,
what are you going to do? Are you going to crib daily?
Yeah.
Why has that happened? Okay, we see examples like that. People are not able to come
to terms with it,
terms with it, and they live with that shock.
Yeah.
But I don't think, मतलब, there are many people I know personally who have still done phenomenally well, right, for themselves, for their families. Governance भी वैसे ही है, आपको help मिला तो बहुत अच्छा, नहीं मिला तो आप क्या कर लोगे, मतलब it is not in your hand. Second, why we see a lot of negative stories is, see, at one point of time when I was working in Asian Paints, तो परफॉर्मेंस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम होता था, राइट, बी रेटिंग, सी रेटिंग, 1 रेटिंग, 2 रेटिंग, जो भी है. अभी मैं जब कहता हूँ कि जब आप स्टार्टअप कर रहे हो तो दिन में आपको 10 बार फेल होने का एबिलिटी होना चाहिए, राइट. बॉस, जब गवर्नमेंट भी अपना गवर्नेंस कर रहा है तो वहां पे भी तो एक इंडिविजुअल ड्राइव कर रहा है ना, तो उसको भी दिन में 10 बार फेल होने का वो लीव आपको देना पड़ेगा,
करेक्ट,
राइट. एंड सेकेंड, देयर आर ह्यूज अमाउंट. सी व्हाट आई हैव लर्नड आफ्टर, so in warehouse automation, the good thing is that you go to the countryside, right. We have automated more than 500 warehouses today from Jammu till Kanyakumari, right. Okay, we have not automated a warehouse in Kashmir as of now, but almost there would hardly be any state where I would have not visited, right. And what I've learned is there are huge amount of legacy issues. There are huge amount. So
tell me more about legacy issues.
लैंड यूज को लेके लेगेसी इशू है, राइट, कि आप लैंड कैसे दोगे. आप मान लीजिए, अगर अभी आई विल नॉट नेम द सिटी,
राइट,
आप वहां पे वेयरहाउस में पहुंच जाते हैं, राइट, वहां पे यूनियन होता है जो आपको कहीं और से लेबर लाने नहीं देगा. आप वहां पे जाके लड़ोगे,
करेक्ट,
आप लड़ लो, राइट. इट इज इजी टू कम ऑन ट्विटर एंड राइट अबाउट ऑल दीज थिंग्स. वो ट्रक नहीं लगने देगा आपका अगर आप उसका लेबर यूज नहीं करते हो तो अभी गवर्नमेंट थोड़ी ना इनकरेज कर रहा है उनको, करेक्ट, कि बॉस तुम ऐसे कर रहे हो या वैसे कर रहे हो, करेक्ट. अभी अगर किसी सिटी का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बहुत खराब है, वो 5 साल में कैसे सही हो जाएगा, राइट. हाउ विल यू करेक्ट इट इन 5 years?
इन दैट एग्जांपल ऑफ यूनियन है, यू वर्क विद देम, और कोई ऑप्शन ही नहीं है.
और कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है. वो बोलता है कि आप साहब कहीं से लेबर लेके आओगे तो प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा आपको. अरे हमको भी अपना काम करना है, हम क्यों लेके आएंगे कहीं से. हम उससे हाथ पैर जोड़ते हैं, हम बोलते हैं कि आप अच्छे से हमारा काम करके दे दीजिए, हमको कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, आप बहुत अच्छे लोग हैं, हम भी अच्छे लोग हैं. So at the end of the day, my only point is that अगर होता है तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, नहीं भी होता है तो आप काम तो करोगे ना.
I have a perfect story for this. I was sitting with 2 entrepreneurs running factories in Indore. ठीक है, I spoke to them about ease of business. What do you think is the ease of business in India and stuff like that? Both of them had a very different opinion. He's like, भाई इससे बढ़िया देश नहीं है, सब हो जाता है यहाँ पर. The other one was a lot more idealistic. नहीं ये यूनियन आ जाती है, नहीं ये कोई पास वाले गांव वाले आ जाते हैं, हम काम करें कि ये करें. कोई ऑफिसर आ जाता है और वो बोलता है कि आपकी इसमें प्रॉब्लम, ये वाली प्रॉब्लम है, वो वाली प्रॉब्लम है. जब प्रॉब्लम नहीं है तो मैं उससे फाइट करने गया, फिर मैंने ये किया वो किया. दूसरा वाला बोल रहा है, भाई ये सब मेरे यहाँ भी होता है, सबसे बात करो, हाथ जोड़ो, थोड़ा बहुत जो करना है वो करो, और मेरा काम चल रहा है. मैं बल्कि बोलता है मैं तो पहले भेज देता हूँ. अब मैं पहले भेज देता हूँ जो भी आसपास गांव वालों को जो फैक्ट्री लगी है उनको जो भी चाहिए, जैसा भी चाहिए, वो मैं पहले भेज देता हूँ कि मेरा काम चलते रहना चाहिए, मेरी फैक्ट्री नहीं रुकनी चाहिए.
सो आप किसी के गांव में जाके फैक्ट्री लगा रहे हो तो क्या आप उसके साथ बैठ के हाय हेलो नहीं करोगे, आप बात नहीं करोगे. तो दैट्स व्हेन वी बिल्ड आवर हाउसेस, राइट. तो क्या घर बनाने में दिक्कत ही नहीं आती?
एग्जैक्टली.
मतलब कभी सिविल कॉन्ट्रैक्टर नहीं आता, कभी, अब उसमें भी गवर्नमेंट का हाथ है नहीं है, बट हम क्या करते हैं, अपना घर तो बनाना है. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि यार नहीं हो रहा तो हम घर छोड़ देंगे. अभी आई वॉज इन रोहतक and we faced जाट agitation, right? Huge violence. अगर आपने डार्क नाइट राइजेस देखी हो, गॉथम वाज बर्निंग, आई हैव सीन इट विद माय ओन आईज. तो क्या एशियन पेंट्स ने फैक्ट्री बंद कर दी वहां?
और गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगा अब इसमें? वायलेंस कंट्रोल कर सकता है पुलिस,
whatever they could have done, मिसहैंडल हुआ, ये हुआ, हम तो अपनी प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में चीजें मिसहैंडल करते हैं, हम क्या किसी को बोले? तो इट्स पार्ट एंड पार्सल, एवरीबडी इज ट्राइंग टू जस्टिफाई देयर ओन मीन्स। मतलब गवर्नमेंट इज ऑल्सो द एक्सिस्टिंग गवर्नमेंट और एक्सिस्टिंग डिस्पेंसेशन is doing things so that they can remain in power for long, right? जब तक बिजनेस करने से वो होता है तो सपोर्ट करेंगे, नहीं हुआ तो बंद कर देंगे। You need to be ready for that as well, right? And there are many companies who have reinvented themselves because of policy regulation. अभी शार्क टैंक पे मैं एक कंपनी का देख रहा था, वो फेसबुक पे उनका कोई एक पेज था, and then they one fine day just Facebook eliminated their page, and then they started on another OTT stage.
I've interviewed Vinay on the podcast, so I know the story that you're talking about. Also in Indore,
right? So that was also a story of Indore, and then they started up. अभी उसमें क्या गवर्नमेंट का रोल था?
Correct.
तो you need to be ready for regulatory changes. You need to be ready. The only better thing that India offers, as you said, vis-a-vis China or someone else, or China, but ठीक है, बाकी डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रीज में भी ऐसा ही है, is policy continuity. To a very large extent, irrespective of BJP or Congress coming to power.
Correct.
Policy continuity तो broadly same रहता है.
Especially business sense में, और वो न्यूज में नहीं आता.
न्यूज में नहीं आता है.
Correct.
तो वो मतलब policy continuity रहता है. आप चाहे मतलब bills की बात कर ले, apart from ideology, the policy continuity is there. So
a classic example would be EVs, right? Regardless of कौन government आने वाला है 5
साल बाद, सब EVs को support. So very good example. So Arvind Kejriwal and Amit Shah, I think, based on what I see in the media, don't see eye to eye. Right? But Delhi has a policy where they want all the taxi fleets to go on EVs by 2030 or whatever it is. And central government is also promoting EV. So this is the best example कि irrespective of whomsoever is in power, whatever their understanding is, they will try to advance the same policy. If you ask me, to be very honest, minus the ideology, BJP equal to AAP equal to Congress.
Correct. All political parties same.
Minus the ideology, everything remains the same. And that is the beauty of this country कि policy continuity रहेगा irrespective कि कौन है. When we were evaluating UP, we also had offers from Rajasthan. They were also very friendly. They also wanted us to come there. Right. They also were putting their best feet forward. So everybody wants to get investment today, and at the end of the day we understand कि उनके भी अपने limitations हैं, because पॉलिसी आप जिस हिसाब से बनाते हो, किस हिसाब से वो एग्जीक्यूट होता है, दीज आर टू डिफरेंट स्ट्रीम्स.
अगर उसको 5 साल में वापस इलेक्ट नहीं होना है तो दे विल डू थिंग्स डिफरेंटली आल्सो, राइट? द रियलिटी इज दे हैव टू गेट इलेक्टेड 5 years लेटर,
एंड एवरीबॉडी वांट्स, सी मतलब मुझे शायद ही ऐसा कोई पॉलिटिकल पार्टी या कोई पॉलिटिकल पर्सन होगा जो सुबह उठता होगा और बोलता होगा आज जॉब्स नहीं क्रिएट करूंगा.
एग्जैक्टली.
ऐसा आई डोंट थिंक सो. ऐसा कोई सोचता होगा नहीं आज जॉब्स क्रिएट नहीं करूंगा, आज थोड़ी और भूखमरी फैला दूंगा. People, I don't know. I don't think so. People would think like that. But हाँ, बहुत सारे issues उनका भी होता होगा. मतलब घर में छोटा छोटा काम करते हैं तो एक एक चीज कराने के लिए, एक रिपेयर भी कराना हो तो बहुत टाइम लग जाता है. यहाँ पे तो हम बहुत सारे मतलब बिग स्केल पे चीजों की बात कर रहे हैं.
I think the dichotomy also plays out when the entrepreneur here wants infrastructure, regulation, everything like a proper first world US. बट द एबिलिटी टू कट कॉर्नर्स, क्योंकि हम तो डेवलपिंग कंट्री में ना, हमको थोड़ा तो वो दो थोड़ा
बेनिफिट. हाँ, आई एग्री. तो मतलब यू गेट प्रोज एंड कॉन्स ऑफ एवरीथिंग.
एग्जैक्टली.
राइट. तो वही है, मतलब दैट्स व्हाट माय फिलॉसफी इज, एंड आई कुड बी टोटली रॉन्ग, बट दिस इज माय फिलॉसफी.
द सेम थिंग विद करप्शन आल्सो, राइट? इट्स you have to look at it at a spectrum of like how far we've come, right? Is it a switch that you just press today and say अब से corruption नहीं होगा? वो पॉसिबल नहीं है, राइट? इन अ कंट्री लाइक इंडिया.
नहीं, एक टाइम था व्हेन अन्ना आंदोलन वाज हैपनिंग, आई वाज आल्सो अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट यूटोपियन सोसाइटी व्हिच वुड थिंक कि हाँ, इस देश में करप्शन पॉसिबल नहीं है. एज यू ग्रो यू अंडरस्टैंड कि it is less of a systemic and more of a human problem.
Exactly. Right? And this that back to that story of like, you know, ease of business and what he was speaking about. He said some officer came and said आपका ये लाइसेंस पास कराना है, जो भी थोड़ा बहुत वो. And the other person was like, हाँ ऐसा होता है, but मैं क्यों दूँ उसको पे? Like क्यों? Why do I pay him in any way or form or give him anything, right? And the perspective is, look at his salary. He's the government employee. Look at his salary. And imagine yourself in that salary. Will you not try and figure out some way to sort of make more money? Is it not? It's not outright, you know, he's not saying कि मैं बंद करवा दूंगा फैक्ट्री, but वो कुछ मिडिल ग्राउंड ढूंढने की कोशिश कर रहा है. वो आज की डेट में इंडिया में होता है, हर जगह होता है, right? You just have to understand the human perspective of it. It's not the government who can say, you know, I'll put him in jail. For that kind of, you can't really do that, right? So the human perspective of people want to make more money, want a better quality of life for their family and stuff like that, which is also a root for a lot of this on-ground corruption that you talk about, right?
And see, a lot of on-ground corruption, I think many times people at high level are not even aware.
Exactly.
Right?
You can't be aware of it.
One thing that I have definitely seen a change from my time at Asian Paints, a lot of these inspectors, etc., the interaction has now become very minimal. Genuinely very minimal.
Right.
See, यार आपका लेबर लॉ है,
हाँ.
आपको फॉलो करना है, आप करो ना.
हाँ.
कुछ नहीं होगा.
करेक्ट.
वो होता क्या, जो आप कट कॉर्नर करने वाली बात बोल रहे हो ना, कि फैक्ट्री लाइसेंस लिया नहीं, फायर एनओसी लिया नहीं, अभी हमने देखा बेसमेंट में कोचिंग क्लास चला दी. अब जब वो इंस्पेक्टर आएगा, ही विल एक्सपेक्ट हिज और हर पाउंड ऑफ फ्लैश.
ऑफ कोर्स.
राइट. तो आप या तो रूल फॉलो कर लो, कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं होगा. But you cannot have, it's like having my cake and eating it too.
Yeah, the fire NOC is such a big example in manufacturing facilities and stuff like that, because of course it takes certain level of investment up front to do it, and the entrepreneurs cutting corners की क्यों करें?
हाँ, तो आप अगर शुरू में वो इन्वेस्टमेंट कर दो, सारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डाल दो, आपको मिलेगा ना फायर एनओसी. अब तो प्रोसेस इतना इजी हो गया है हर चीज का, टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट.
राइट.
एंड इट्स गॉट नथिंग टू डू, आई डोंट नो व्हाटसोएवर इट इज, बट बिकॉज ऑफ टेक.
Right.
There is so much things happening on self certification. ये सारी चीजें, अभी आप बिजनेस करोगे तो कॉम्प्लिकेशंस तो आएगा ना. अभी कल को एकदम से अकाउंटिंग नॉर्म्स चेंज हो जाते हैं, ये चेंज हो जाते हैं, तो आप करोगे ना.
हाँ, एग्जैक्टली.
आप करो, लिस्टिंग नॉर्म्स चेंज हो जाते हैं तो फॉलो करोगे ना. ये थोड़ा बोलोगे गलत हो गया. तो बॉस, लॉज आर ऑल्सो लाइक दैट. अगर आया है तो फॉलो करना है, उसमें कोई येस और नो नहीं है. हाँ, आपको अगर बहुत प्रॉब्लम है ना, जाओ कोर्ट में चैलेंज कर दो, फाइट करो. देयर आर पीपल हु हैव डन दैट एज वेल. राइट.
एंड लॉस्ट इयर्स ऑफ लाइक
हाँ, बट दे आर हैप्पी. भाई हमको ये करना था, कर लो. देयर आर मेनी कंपनीज हु हैव डन दैट. बट गवर्नमेंट से कुछ नहीं होता, इज व्हाट माय पॉइंट इज. तुमको खुद करना है, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर ठीक होना चाहिए, बाकी सब खुद करना है.
That crib or the victim mindset is not favorable for you to be an entrepreneur in India. There are challenges. It's a developing country, and so are the opportunities accordingly.
No, if it helps you to crib and get something out of your system, कर लो. But फिर आगे बढ़ जाओ.
मतलब रात में करो, लेकिन सुबह उठ के you have to have that outlook. Correct. Where that without the optimism you can't really build it.
You can't. See, it is difficult to do things in India. That's a reality. Right? और ये reality आज आपको पता नहीं चलता. आप जब 10वीं क्लियर करते हो, आपको तभी पता चल जाता है
exactly.
कि बहुत स्ट्रगल है भाई, बहुत स्ट्रगल है. राइट. तो वो स्ट्रगल आगे भी आपको मिलता ही रहेगा, विच इज फाइन. दैट्स हाउ आवर forefathers have chosen our country to be. So we live with it.
And there, I mean, you just have to find the edge of like why being in India doing certain things will make sense. Once you figure that edge out, right?
Correct.
Whatever said and done, there is a large opportunity to build a business for India, to also build a business sitting in India for the world. We've seen last decade or so come up with a lot of stories. Addverb is a great example. I think there'll be a lot more with the new generation of entrepreneurs who are more optimistic about ye problems hai, I will deal with it, but there's something large to be built.
Yeah. Or if you feel नहीं करना है तो you can go outside. There are many opportunities. लोग जाते ही हैं. Right? दोनों टाइप के एग्जाम्पल है. लोग बाहर भी जाते हैं, लोग यहाँ भी रहते हैं. And see, at the end of the day, you should find peace. बाहर भी जाओगे, वहाँ भी प्रॉब्लम है. ऐसा तो नहीं है वहाँ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. H1B पे हो, जॉब चली गई, कनाडा भागना पड़ेगा.
करेक्ट.
तो बहुत सारे एग्जांपल्स हैं. तो
I lived in the US. I came back in 2015 after living there for 7 years. तो बाकी सब तो ठीक है. The kind of relationships and family and friends that happens in India, and what we are used to, especially coming from a small town like Indore, that felt very alien to me. So I lived there for 7 years, but I could never sort of foresee कि मैं यहाँ life बना पाऊंगा. Forget the economic opportunities. Of course, those were better. Earning in dollar, traveling the world, it's a good life. There is no doubt about it, right? But at the end of the day, to find my own peace, I had to take certain decisions, which you live with the consequences of it also. It's not going to be one is better over the other objectively in every sort of point.
True. And that's where you have to find what works for you.
Yeah. All right, we are going to switch some gears and talk about AI. The AI that we know of today from the internet is all about ChatGPT and all these new tools that people are getting used to. But a company like Addverb has been investing in ML AI for a while now. It's obviously now accelerated. I'm assuming it's also accelerated in your domain on how AI can be used. Tell me a little bit about how Addverb or robotics and automation has been using AI, and where do you think this is going?
So obviously because of ChatGPT and the entire transform model that came, there have been a lot of use cases that has helped people become more aware about AI, and I think in general awareness about AI has increased to a very large extent. Similarly to how it happened for internet, then it happens for mobiles, right, and apps. Today, my father can also use net banking very easily, which was not the case 10 years back. So that's what generative AI and ChatGPT, etc., have done. But we have been using AI since almost like 5-6 years now for computer vision applications, for mobile robot applications, for navigation modules, to build navigation modules. We also use AI extensively in our warehouse control systems, warehouse management systems. Our algorithms are self-learning algorithms where with each order that they have processed, the data that they get, they become more intelligent on where to store the inventory for faster access, how to retrieve the inventory for faster throughput. So these are the places where we have been using AI extensively. Essentially, see, robots are agents of AI. So at the end of the day, it's the algorithm. So in a fleet management system, it's an AI powered algorithm which decides किस रोबोट को कब टास्क देना है, किस रोबोट को मूव करना है, कौन से रोबोट को चार्जिंग में डालना है, राइट. एंड देन द रोबोट टू दैट एक्सटेंट इज इनेबल्ड विद एआई टू फिगर आउट कि जब मुझे रुकना है तो मैं रुक जाऊं, मैं ऑब्स्टिकल को डिटेक्ट कर लूं, मैं कब साइड से निकल जाऊं, अपना शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ कैसे ढूंढूं. सो दीज आर सम ऑफ द यूज केसेस ऑफ एआई दैट वी हैव बीन यूजिंग एंड इम्प्लीमेंटिंग. And even when Jensen Huang came to India,
Right.
Adverb was one of the companies he talked about in his speech, which was extensively using AI to build in India, to build for the world, and to build robots.
That's also where the partnership with Reliance comes into picture with, I think Mukesh Ambani and Jensen Huang were sort of sharing the stage. I'm assuming that also helps in sort of having some access to GPUs or understanding where's the world headed in terms of AI.
So with Reliance, what essentially happens is that, see, so they have a petchem division,
Right.
they have a retail division, they obviously have a telecom division,
Right.
they also have hospitals,
Yeah.
then they have e-commerce division, right. So they also have hotels with Geo Convention Center, etc. So you can deploy for multiple use cases. They will always have requirement for automation.
Correct.
So they become sort of your breeding ground for innovation.
To understand the problem, to really
Problem
sort of deploy,
statement, to deploy the solution, you have full freedom.
iterate on it and figure out what's
Correct.
working, what's
And
not.
then integration, they have to integrate, they have no option.
Right.
It's like a marriage that has happened.
Right.
मतलब वो अभी देखने का और घूंघट उठाने का टाइम गया, अभी शादी हो गया, अभी साथ में
Right.
चलने का है.
हाँ.
तो then a lot of time integration also happens. They also go out of their way to make those integrations happen, and this becomes sort of a playground for us to really build innovative solutions, and then we can export these solutions to across different customers in retail, petchem, etc., and that's what we've been doing in last 3-4 years.
Very interesting perspective of how an out and out VC can never provide something like this versus a strategic investor can actually, give you that breeding ground to play around and actually build solutions.
Yeah, so you've nailed it right. So
Yeah.
they are a sort of a strategic investor,
Right.
because they give us a lot of space to experiment. They always have multiple use cases.
Right.
They are in growing phase.
Of
They
course.
give us huge use cases and across different industries. And so obviously a VC could not have given that
Yeah.
kind of a leverage.
Makes sense. We're going to end to go towards the end segment. One thing that I've started asking a lot of people that I interview is, as an entrepreneur, you're in the field. And we've spoken about the opportunities that come out of the economic model of India, or the problems that are specific to India. But as an entrepreneur, as Adverb, as an individual, what are top 3 problems that you think a young entrepreneur today should try and attempt to solve that can directly impact an Adverb or your personal life in that matter from an entrepreneur perspective? What are top 3 problem statements that come to your mind on we need more people working on that problem statement, we need more sort of investment going into it, but if somebody listening to this has a solution for it, if they wanted to reach out, what are those top 3 top of mind problems?
So I'll probably take a broader view.
Yeah.
A broader view. So first is, I think there's a lot of automation that is still required in healthcare, based on what I have seen in terms of, and it should be affordable automation. Affordable, but at the same time meets the global standard, quality, health, etc. And India has done it in the past. So in terms of may it be invasive or non-invasive, you need a lot of automation in robotics. So I'll only come from the perspective where I have sort of experience. So you need a lot of robotic and automation companies which to solve the problem in healthcare.
Give us a few examples of what.
So let's say we developed a remote ultrasound application sometime back in collaboration with AIMS and IIT Delhi. So what essentially we did was we developed our own cobot, we developed our own haptic device, and with the help of 5G, this robot can perform ultrasound in, let's say, a public healthcare center, a PHC in any village. There could be a single doctor who could be present in AIMS or who could be present in Bombay or HN Reliance Hospital or wherever he or she is, right? And then so what will happen is the doctors would not need to go to villages.
Right.
Okay, they should, they must, but then you
There
have
are
a doctor
realistical challenges.
there are logistical challenges, safety challenges. What if there is a pregnant lady? She cannot go to a village,
Correct.
right? So you can have people at different locations, geographically also different location, perform this ultrasound, right? Imagine the amount of problem that it solves.
And we're only talking about the India context, which is a different problem. But imagine this being there in US with a doctor in India, because the cost arbitrage is there. There's a lot of other things where you're like, ultrasound hi karna hai na?
Correct. So, and with 5G,
Yeah.
right, what has happened is the latency is gone. Correct. So, we developed this solution, and when we were developing this solution, what we realized was there is a huge market. There is a huge requirement in hospital automation, healthcare automation, where so the job of a nurse is to care.
Right.
Right. But today the job of the nurse goes half into billing. And okay, if you remove some of the high-end hospitals, half of the time she's billing, she's bringing some pills, she's bringing some material, somebody is bringing food, somebody is bringing newspaper. You can have robots which can have different cabins. So we gave a solution. So during COVID, we gave a solution where there was a sanitation robot which was enabled with UV lights, and they would go. So once the patient has come out of the room, the robot would go into the room, and then the robot would sanitize the room, right? Now the cleaning staff which goes, I reduce their exposure to the virus.
Yeah.
So they can now clean everything. Okay, they will still wear the gear,
Right.
but they now know that there is no virus in the room and the room has been sanitized.
Right.
So there are many use cases that can be developed which can bring more humanity into nursing and healthcare jobs.
Yeah.
That's what I feel based on my experience. I have not dwelled much into it. Second field where I very extensively feel is, so there was a time when there used to be NIITs, aptechs of the world, which were sort of readying for the software industry, right? Jet King, NIIT, aptech. I think
very large businesses, by the way.
Very large. So I remember, I think Jet King used to sponsor Delhi Daredevils,
right,
at that point of time. So today, there are more than 10,000 ITI diploma, engineering, BSc educational colleges. You need to teach people about robotics, right? Just like how big the auto industry is today, robotics or humanoids is going to become that bigger industry in next 10 years. And there is a very big gap. We have already now seen a policy where AI, robotics, etc. will be taught in class 12th.
Right.
But in engineering, you need to have a separate course.
Right.
Either college can do it, or there can be like EduComp, etc. There can be companies which teach robotics, set up labs, set up equipments, testing kits, through which students can learn more. Right?
It's actually across the spectrum then, right?
Yes.
You're talking about, it's not just, it's top engineering colleges doing it, but also ITI
is doing it, diplomas doing it, everyone. That's why I said BSc, more than 10,000 colleges, right? So common infrastructure can be utilized. Can we have tech parks specifically where people can come, get trained, get certificates? So I remember when I was doing engineering, there used to be a DB2 certification from IBM, right? There would be an Oracle certified professional, a Java certified professional. So you would need a robotics certified professionals who can then, we were talking about lack of skills, get jobs not only in India but across the world.
Yeah.
Right? So it opens employment opportunities, avenues for them as well. Third field where I very strongly feel robotics and automation can create opportunities for future of entrepreneurship is agriculture. So see, what is happening essentially today is youth are migrating to the cities. Nobody wants to stay in the villages. There is no labor, but you need food, right? Even if you get AI, you will still need food. and we need to grow our food. The
Yeah.
productivity is going down, and all sorts of challenges are being faced by these people, right? That's where you can have robotics, which can really be a game changer, which can really automate a lot of hard jobs in agriculture, can increase the productivity, and you can also have micro processing center. So today the problem is कभी टमाटर ज़्यादा हो जाता है, कभी टमाटर कम हो जाता है, कभी प्याज ज़्यादा हो जाता है, कभी प्याज कम हो जाता है. You can have micro processing centers which can be mobile, which can shift from village to village, do primary processing of these vegetables and store it and give more value to laborers or agriculture farmers. So these are some 2-3 things I feel has huge opportunities for entrepreneur if somebody really wants to build for India. And again, hardware, software.
And technically also for global, right? Because a lot of these
so
solutions will...
You solve anything for India, you solve it for cost globally.
Yeah, and that's warehouse management is a prime example for it. Very complex problem. I heard one of your interviews where you said a lot of the problems that we are facing, they have not even imagined solving those problems. We have to solve those in India because that's how you build a business out of it. And then, as you said, going there is much easier in some cases because it's a tough problem solve kari hui hai India.
Correct.
Right? All 3 points, all 3 businesses or rough industries that you spoke about. Now that I ask you about having done this journey, right? And there is that nuance of course, you saw a lot of this in Asian Paint, so you were able to understand the insight. But let's say somebody today, fairly young, says, this is roughly the field that I want to build in, right? How would you advise them to sort of go about figuring this out? Is it a lot of visiting what's happening in the world, understanding, what are people doing, try and build partnerships, like a tech partnership with somebody else? How do you start something? Is it because otherwise it becomes a problem that the large companies will need to solve for, right? So how does somebody start in this field with all your experience of starting up and now, building Addverb for the last 8
So 2-3 things that really helped us. One, okay, we had certain experience of being users in the industry. Second, we also have visited, among the 4 of us, we would have visited more than 10,000 factories globally.
Wow.
Right? So that's the kind of curiosity we have. Or
how do you visit a factory? What do you tell them? Why are you visiting? Because people don't open their...
So when we were in Asian Paints, whenever we would get a quotation or whenever we would open an RFQ, we would ask all the suppliers who are quoting to get us reference sites visits, right? Second, now as vendors,
right,
we get more than 200-300 quotations every quarter. So if I've got a quotation, I want to visit and I want to see what your factory does essentially, and that also becomes an opportunity for me to learn. Right. So that's how you evolve as a professional. And then we all constantly seek out to people. We want to visit your factory. We want to visit your factory. Our suppliers are, let's say, Siemens, ABB, etc. So when you go to Germany, we tell Siemens, okay, can we visit your factory? We want to see this, how this is done, how that is done. We want to see this assembly process, that assembly process. So we have visited a lot of factories that has helped us to learn. So if you ask me, basis these 2 experiences, I would ask anybody to first work in this industry. So robotics and automation is also very wide. You want to be in process automation, you want to be in material handling automation, you want to be in consumer automation. Whatever it is you want to do, first work in that industry. Get a hang of the products, right? Get a hang of what are the challenges of deployment, because this is hardware. This is not software. ये वो इनकम टैक्स वाला पोर्टल नहीं है कि 4 बार पुश कर दिया तो इनकम टैक्स भर जाएगा, राइट? दिस इज हार्डवेयर इज हार्ड. एनीथिंग कैन गो रॉन्ग. सो यू गो सी हाउ यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड मेंटेनेंस कैसे होगा, सपोर्ट कैसे मिलेगा, एस्थेटिक्स कैसा होगा. आपको वो एक बार टच एंड फील एक्सपीरियंस लेना चाहिए, and then you will automatically find an ecosystem which will help you to start on your own in a particular product category. I would not recommend anyone कि आप कॉलेज से निकलो और स्टार्ट कर दो. कर सकते लोग, ऐसा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बट
टेक सम इंडस्ट्री यूज केस,
take some experience, take some industry experience, exposure. I think anywhere between 5 to 7 years will definitely help. And
that also busts that myth of what's popular on the tech sort of funding ecosystem, media ecosystem, ki right out of college get funding, build something. That's the new way to crack it, right? But a lot of
क्या करोगे?
फिर क्या करोगे?
फिर 31-32 साल की उम्र में आगे क्या करोगे?
करेक्ट.
अभी तो 70 साल और हैं. जिस हिसाब से मेडिकल टेक्नोलॉजी बढ़ रही है, क्या पता मैं अपना कॉन्शियंस किसी ह्यूमनॉइड में डाल के अमर हो जाऊं.
या
तो इतना कुछ बचा है, तो that's why you get some experience, solve some hard problems, then you'll automatically find your calling.
That's something that I learned. If the idea is to maximize your probability of success, especially when you're playing a 70, you're going to be playing this game till 70, 75, 80, you probably want to pace it out. You want to have that longer term plan of like, how do you want to make it, right? Because doing a lot of what you attempting to do a lot of what you did right out of college is just playing the game on hard mode, very hard mode, right? The probability of success is going to be very minimal. Those who succeed will get all the media, attention and everything, and which will lead everybody else to believe this is the way to do it. But the probability of going wrong is so much higher because you have no idea how the industry works. In your case, the benefit of doing Asian Paints before this can't be understated. That's the unique insight that got you guys together and said,
huge. It can never be understated,
right?
I think if it was not for us working at Asian Paints, I would be somewhere else,
right? This wouldn't, exactly, this wouldn't have happened. As you said, opening doors in factories, doing that automation. The other unique insight that I have, it's a Paints is the outcome. It's a technology company.
That's how we used to see the kind of technology that we are implementing.
Right.
Paint is just an outcome. When I would talk to my peers who would be working in other industries, they would not know this amount of automation and they would still be involved in manual processes. So that's what we felt, that we are really at the edge of technology here.
4 or 5 of you guys started this from Asian Paints, right? What was the average age when you guys...
So 6 of us started, 2 have left, 4 of us are still there.
Right.
The average age when we started this would be 34, 35 kind of thing.
Wow. Which is 10, 12 years of industry experience now. And of course, when you just join out, it takes time to get the right experience as well, right? Once you just join a company, you're not going to just automatically get exposed to all the important things.
You do your dues.
Exactly. You have to pay your dues. You have to do those Excel sheets, VLOOKUPs and everything.
And you have to spend some time on the shop floor. And then only you get opportunities to learn. मतलब ऐसा नहीं होता, आजकल शायद ऐसा होता होगा कि आप सोचो कि मैं day 1 पे जाऊँ और छक्का मार दूँ. ऐसा नहीं होता.
Right.
You go, you learn, you absorb.
You show your work ethic to the world. You actually have to show your work ethic to the world. Interesting. I'm going to pull back to that point of one visit a lot of these places. What else goes into building in this space, being long-term successful?
You need a good team. You really need a good team. You cannot do everything on your own.
Let's double click on building a good team in India.
So you need multi-functional engineering teams, multidisciplinary teams. So you need to have good people who can design. You need to have good people who understand automation, hardcore automation, electronics, etc. You need to have people who are really good in software, and I'm not talking about enterprise software. I'm talking about building low-level and high-level software.
Right.
So low-level software that can be integrated with your hardware. And that's hard. All of this coming from experience is hard. And then software, which can be on the top layer and integrate with the ERP of the customer. So you need to build a multidisciplinary team. Now, when we started in India, robotics तो था ही नहीं. Automation ठीक है था. थोड़ा बहुत design में था. Automobile का design हो, ये हो, वो हो. Software फिर enterprise software था. So 2 things that we did was, first, we got a lot of our ex-colleagues to join. Right? We sold them the vision. And probably they had certain trust.
Which is very common across, especially older entrepreneurs. They know the good people that they work with, and you want to attract them.
So despite Asian Paints being alma mater to us, we got a lot of people from Asian Paints. Right? Abhi karna hai to karna hai, abhi kya karenge.
Correct.
Then second, what we did, and we still believe in it, we believe in building talent, not buying talent.
Tell me more about this.
That is something that we have been doing since the beginning, right from 2017. So 16 we started. Right from 2017, we have been recruiting from engineering colleges.
I've heard a lot of companies talk about building talent. What I want to just go deeper on, which you were already going, is what does it really mean on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Because it's cool. It's a thing to say. Not a lot of people can truly back it up. But I know that there are companies that have thoughtfully designed their program management trainee programs and how they sort of give people these opportunities. So I want to really understand that.
Sure. So I don't have the resources of a Unilever.
Right.
So long back, Sumantra Ghoshal wrote this book, Managing Radical Change, I think, in which he mentioned about the management trainee program of Unilever.
Right.
So I don't have the money I didn't have the resources to have a program like Unilever, or even for Asian Paints for that instance.
Right.
But okay, so how do I, so now that also becomes my advantage to a certain extent, right? Okay. So in Asian Paints, you have to get all the management trainees join at a single place. You have to get all of them at a single location. You have to give them certain exposure. So you have to wait. If somebody is available for early joining, you cannot do that. At least that's what we experienced at that time. I don't know
Right.
how it happens today. But I have to look at certain things. So first, I specifically focused on colleges which sort of had some pedigree or some, let's say, a robotics club or something like that in robotics and automation, right? Or which were known for their core branches. So we went to GSITS in Indore because I was from Indore. I knew they had a robotics club. They had a very good instrumentation automation branch, and this was one of the good colleges, right? Second, so this is how we filtered some of the colleges which would have good robotic clubs.
Because the idea is, of course, you can't just go to IIT Madras and recruit a lot of people there
Because I will not have the
resources.
money.
And also, they will not join you.
They will not
Even
join
if
me.
you had the money, you don't have the Unilever brand at the end of the day.
I don't have a brand. Who am I?
Right.
So okay, Sangeet was from IIT Kharagpur, Pratik was from IIT Pawai.
Which get the initial attention, but
I was from TIS, Beer was from NIT Jaipur, but so what?
Yeah.
There are hundreds and thousands of alumni.
Right.
So we identified specific colleges. Then we identify colleges which would give us people to join as an intern. So we went to institutes which would give us interns for 6 months, not 2 months.
Right.
Right. So I need a 6-month intern. Then when these people came, I gave them live projects. So I would have a very small 5-day, 10-day kind of a session with them where I would tell them the basic tools because I was also evolving.
Yeah, of course.
And then I would give them live projects. Now, I also developed a top layer of technical experts from my personal network. So we hired people like Deepak, we hired people like Binayji, we hired people like Alvin, etc., who are still part of Addverb. And they would have a team of 4 to 5 freshers. And these freshers would directly work on the field. So you bet on them. When you bet on them, you let them know that you are betting your future on them.
Yeah.
And then you just see magic happen.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of them will not be able to handle pressure. A lot of them, many of them have risen to the occasion. Today, there are many robotic companies that are being started by employees who were working with Addverb. Right? So that's how we realized that we need to build talent. We cannot buy talent. And that's what we did essentially. We built a core team and we clearly told people. So there is a phenomenon called the Pygmalion effect. Right? So we implemented a lot of Pygmalion effect in people. We told them that you could do it. And then they actually did it.
Yeah.
Right? We never held them back. We let them fail.
Right.
Right?
You have to. Yeah.
So if project is going wrong, we have gone on the project site, leaving all our work to get it right, but still rewarding the individual for making the effort. So these are some of the principles or philosophies that we have developed, and we have stayed with these freshers till 1, 2 in the night, making them understand that, okay, if you're there, we are also there. And we will make it work. Over a period of time, we built a culture where every year we induct certain freshers, we talk about our value system, we talk about our vision, and then the team takes care of the rest.
Yeah.
And that's what we focus on. So we give a lot of internships. For 6 months, we give a lot of internships. We try and test people out, and then we hire them. But now we have a more elaborate system. Now we have the resources where we can get people in, get certain training programs done, etc., etc. But the philosophy still remains the same. We build talent and not buy talent.
And the payoff that this happens, this starts giving you, let's say 3, 4 years, 5 years.
No, it gave us payoff immediately.
Interesting.
The productivity of freshers has been, I think, more than 5 times than what would have been the productivity of 3 to 4 year experienced people if I would have hired them.
Because of a lot of baggage that they carry from where they used to work and how work happens versus a fresh.
Obviously, so if I hire a software engineer who's work for 5 days a week, मैं बोलूँगा नहीं, मेरा प्रोडक्ट बनना है, तो ऐसा लगा मैंने किडनी मांग ली उसकी. नहीं.
I know what you're talking about.
So if I hire a fresher, I hire a lot of passionate people.
Right.
People.
I was going to get into this. Like there has to be a method to this madness of like how do you hire freshers, which are the right.
So people should have a lot of passion. It reflects. How do you check for initiative? So I have seen people in their colleges writing mails in IISc, DRDO, IITs, profs, etc., whomsoever they read on the internet, and then landing up internship projects. And then having the courage to go from, let's say, a small town in Rourkela to Bombay.
Yeah.
And somebody who has never went. I would have never gone. Right? But they went, They figured out an accommodation. They did an internship for 2 months, which was unpaid. Now that shows initiative and passion.
Yeah.
Right? So you figure out people. So when I was in college, I was taught कि co-curricular activities लिखना चाहिए, ये लिखना चाहिए. The first thing that I do in my interview is, boss, English, Hindi, जो भोजपुरी भी आता है तो बोल दो, ये 3 language मुझे आता है. I am not hiring you for communication. If I am hiring somebody from communication, I'll go to an MBA college.
Yeah,
no worry.
exactly.
Right? Second, let's talk about what you have done in your projects and internship. Don't tell me कि मैं college का ये हूँ, मैं placement department में हूँ, मैं इसमें हूँ, मैं उसमें हूँ. हाँ, one thing that I look for when we are specifically recruiting for projects is, if somebody has played sports, our experiences, their probability of succeeding in projects role increases multifold, or their probability of succeeding in an unstructured environment increases multifold. So these are some of the hacks that we have developed while we are recruiting people. So we try to look for theory why people who have initiative, people who can work on their own. बार बार पीछे मुड़ के देखना ना पड़े कि काम किया है नहीं किया. Okay, as the organization scales up, some of it gets diluted,
Of
but
course.
your basic principles remain the same.
Yeah. Which is the double-edged sword, right? When you don't have the initial resources, you can't have the management trainee program. But because you don't have that, you have a lot more of like high touch, really figure out the initial people who are going to build the base of building Addverb for the long run.
Correct. So one of the ways we really groomed the initial set of freshers we got was we have no cabins at Addverb for founders. So I had a lot of fresh engineers just sitting across the table and then communicating with them regularly, telling them about the vision, understanding their problems and challenges, and then communicating how that problem could be solved on a day-to-day basis. Okay, it has its own disadvantages as well, but it helped us to develop a lot of fresh talent whom we were hiring from campus.
Makes sense. The last piece of this puzzle, good talent, the unique insight or the industry knowledge is the capital part of it, right? Over the last 6-7 years, you've been in this space of using technology and hardware, which is not a VC favorite, so to say, right? Because we've seen the kind of companies, internet first companies that have been funded over the last decade or so. Today's world, manufacturing, warehouse automation, robotics, I'm taking a lot of this together, but are there alternate funding sources where people can tap into? Of course, the friends and family network, the people that the ex company that you were working for should be the base for the initial rounds. But has the funding ecosystem evolved where there is capital beyond that to build companies like these?
So one thing that I never have understood, and I still don't understand, is the capital ecosystem. With all due respect to VCs, I really think they do not have the ability to value businesses or to identify a business. They can identify trends, right? The hot trend, the cold trend. For this kind of business, I would say more traditional funds would be into sort of invest. Then obviously you can have ultra HNIs or ultra HNIs, like our early investor was Shri Jalasdani, who also happens to be our chairman right now and is the promoter of is one of the promoter of Asian Paints. So you can because these people understand manufacturing, they understand what role technology can play. And there are many companies today where the families running these organizations are investing in ancillary industries like robotics, automation, etc. So those family offices might be a better avenue because they will have a longer term horizon.
And also an understanding of
how this business will impact my business.
Exactly.
Or how this industry will impact my business. And they can bring a lot of adjacencies as well. Because they will have their own industry, they will have their own manufacturing locations, etc. I think that would be a more reasonable avenue, and they will not be in a hurry to exit in 3 years, 4 years.
Right. This is very patient capital.
This is patient capital, and this is actual their capital.
Yeah, exactly.
It is not someone else's capital that is being spent. This is for early stage. For late stage, there are many VCs. So what I would say is, for late stage, there are many VCs, there are many PE firms, there are many tech firms who are ready to invest in such companies and businesses. But आपको स्टेज में पहुंचने में 4-5 साल लगेगा.
Correct.
जहाँ पे इनिशियली मुझे नहीं लगता VCs का इतना कैपेबिलिटी है, तो आप या तो फ्रेंड्स एंड फैमिली, या यू गेट अल्ट्रा HNIs, family offices, or you can also get grants from government.
Exactly.
Or there are today many opportunities, like in IITs, professors can also start up on their own, and you can use the IIT as an incubator. That we are seeing a lot of startups like Endure, etc. coming up from that model.
Yeah.
So you would need to try a lot of these avenues, and Like there is a facility, there is a program called Art Park in IISc Bangalore. If you are into hardware tech, you go there, they will fund you, they'll give you grant. So through different ministries,
Right.
and you solve the problem of those ministries. So there are programs like that where you can also get benefit of a grant and
Yeah.
then build on it.
Yeah. And even from a professor's perspective, this is great, right? He's the chief researcher with an equity, with a skin in the game.
Correct.
It's perfect. It's
Correct.
a marriage made
It's
in
a
heaven.
win-win for. So
Yeah.
that's why I was saying that government is trying to do things,
Right.
and I'm also seeing changes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, individual को ही करना है.
Perfect. One of the things that you mentioned was building a light out factory. I've also heard you say light out warehouses, right? Is it literally that? You will not require any sort of lights per se, or any human interaction to do something like this?
So there are lights out factories in the world, and okay, so we have not built 100% lights out facility,
Right.
but we have built lights out warehouses which are almost, I would say, 80 to 85% lights out.
Huh.
So only the job where there is some picking that needs to be done, variable picking or variable packing where you need hand-eye coordination, that's the only place where you require human. Right from the point the material is entering into the warehouse, till its storage, till its retrieval, till its repeated picking, and then even after packing, till it goes to the dock door or dispatch door, there is no human intervention required. So if you don't need any human intervention, you don't need any light. And to that extent, we have been able to achieve 85 to 90% of lights out facility. We did a project with Maersk, Australia. There, if you see, apart from picking, there is right from inwarding, storage, retrieval, sorting, movement, dispatch. There is, and this video is available on YouTube. There is no human intervention required.
Wow.
So that's the kind of facilities that we have been able to build, and I think with humanoids and
It'll become more
robots,
common.
it will become 100% lights out factories in probably next 2-3 years.
Very interesting. I wanted to ask this earlier as well. I couldn't. Looking at the Indian warehousing landscape, there is obviously the large mega warehouses that are generally run by these large public companies, FMCG and stuff like that, which have already started doing automation, are much further ahead in terms of where they are in that journey, right? But there's an L2, L3 of some entrepreneur in some tier 2 has a few warehouses, right? There's probably a bigger one which has more statewide or more country-based logistics, and you probably understand it much better. And if you could help us categorize what kind of warehouses are there, but are we seeing automation at the beginning end of like the mid to small warehouses also, where people are investing in?
So I would classify, so we have grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D classification for warehouses, but that will be different. So even a company which is very mature can have a grade D warehouse.
Right.
At
So
a
that's
small
not size
location.
dependent.
Yeah, they can have a small location. Their market might be small.
Okay.
Or so a company which is dominant in South
Right.
is now entering into North. So they will obviously start with a small warehouse. So in terms of what our experience has been, the company should have a revenue of 300 to 500 crores. And from single facility or from 2-3 facilities, they should be moving huge material. That is the bare minimum required for a use case of automation in India today. That is what we have seen. If you have a top line of 100 crores coming out of 5 different facilities, I don't think you can go for automation. That too, if the facilities are spread across different companies, तो problem है. The sweet spot is जैसे ही आपका 1,000 crore hit होगा and you have 1 or 2 manufacturing facility. So we work with companies like, let's say, Varun Beverages. Varun Beverages is a huge company,
Right.
but they have many smaller facilities. मतलब they have facilities जहाँ से कम turnover भी आता है, but it is still more than 1,000 crore industry. जैसे we have worked with Vector Foods, again more than 1,000 crore industry. We quoted for a project with Indigo Paints. Again, more than 1,000 crore revenue company. So that's the sweet spot. जैसे ही 1,000 करोड़ आपका हिट होता है, आपका 2 या 3 मैन्युफैक्चरिंग लोकेशन है, तो you will have to go for automation. 300 to 500 crores है, आपका एक या 2 warehouse से सारा सामान जा रहा है, तो you would typically need automation.
So generally, people investing in automation are these companies who own these warehouses, right? Is there?
No. So the companies which are, yes, so companies which own these warehouses, but companies
3PL,
don't own warehouses.
Lease yeah.
warehouses.
But they are the ones taking the initiative of automating it.
Yes.
It's not the
so
person.
globally 3PL companies, so DHL, Maersk, UPS, ये सब मेरे client है globally. इंडिया में नहीं है.
मैं यही समझना चाह रहा हूँ. So इंडिया में it is company led warehouse.
हाँ, तो कंपनी जहाँ पे कंपनी अपना वेयरहाउस चलाता है वहां पे वो रखता है 3PL ही है. बट मतलब लेबर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करके रखेगा, एक 3PL पार्टी रखेगा लॉजिस्टिक्स वगैरह के लिए. बट जहां पे उसका एक विजन है, जैसे यूनिलीवर के लिए वी डिड अ समाधान सोल्यूशन जहां पे दे वांटेड टू डू सिंगल डे डिलीवरी टू ऑल द किराना स्टोर्स अक्रॉस चेन्नई। तो वहां पे उनका विजन था कि हमको ये करना है, तो अगर आपको सिंगल डे में करना है तो आपको ऑटोमेशन तो चाहिए, क्योंकि डिलीवरी में भी टाइम लगेगा।
करेक्ट।
और किराना पे आप दिन भर तो उसको सामान भेजते नहीं रह सकते, डिलीवरी स्लॉट्स होंगे उसके।
करेक्ट।
तो उस हिसाब से व्हेन यू आर प्लानिंग, तो यू the company drives it essentially in India. So an ITC would drive it, an Amazon would drive it, a Flipkart would drive it. 3PL per se does not go for that kind of automation in India.
Is it a problem waiting to be solved in a cheaper, more economical way, and therefore these people will get automated? I'm talking about, let's say, mid to size warehouses that are led by the team, and they get multiple different companies to sort of warehouse.
So they'll need volume. They'll see in India, as I said, if you want to scale, you need automation.
हाँ.
Right? If you're very, मतलब if अगर आप 200-300 करोड़ का बिजनेस हो,
हाँ.
और 200 करोड़ के टॉप लाइन पे हर साल 12% 13% से ग्रो कर रहे हो,
हाँ.
आपका काम चल जाएगा।
हाँ.
बिना ऑटोमेशन के भी यू विल बी एबल टू हैंडल द प्रॉब्लम, और यू विल प्रॉब्ली यूज मोर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैन्युफैक्चरर्स और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पार्टी logistics operations, and you'll see कि आप handle करो इतने पे।
So technically, as soon as you go out of India, the market explodes, because that problem.
Yes.
The problem.
So
वो तो छोटे level में-
our average order size in markets outside India is almost 3 to 4 times of our average order size in India. Maybe
Yeah.
5 times of average order size in India. We are doing a project to the scale of 30 million.
Which also explains 6 years of focusing on India, and in 3 years you're now 50-50. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can figure out that the average order size there is huge.
Yeah. Cool. Satish, this was fantastic. I genuinely enjoyed the conversation, because a lot of the topics that you spoke about, I'm deeply sort of curious about, and I'm a nerd about a lot of these things. It was great to get an on-ground perspective on कैसे धंधा चलता है इंडिया में और कैसे चलाना चाहिए, right? All the cribbing aside, there's a way to run a business in India, and you guys have done it fantastically. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you guys the best of luck. If I ever get a chance to visit the Bot Valley, I'm going to hit you up and I'm going to try and visit, because I really love what you guys have built.
Do visit us, and thank you, Siddharth. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.